I'm Will Kamasa from Blizzard, makers of the Iris LED video walls. We're proud to sponsor this Chris Kuroda webcast. Yay! Mr. Kuroda, we'd like to invite you to come to exotic Waukesha, Wisconsin, home of the great Les Paul, to see our walls for yourself. We'll even fly you here to Business Select on Southwest, put you up in the finest Holiday Inn Express, and treat you to lavish meals from our 3-star rated Applebee's. Set Zagat's? The Iris R2 behind me features a 2.9mm pixel pitch, and the outdoor rated IP3 features a 3.9mm pixel pitch. Both have a refresh rate of 3,840 Hz. We're so confident they match up with any panel in the industry, we'll even give you a wall free of charge to use on your next tour. We'll even throw in 100 bags of nutritious, delicious Doritos. Move right. For the rest of you, if you want to see the Blizzard Iris panels in action, head to blizzardpro.com and set up a meeting with our certified Iris experts. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the webcast while I enjoy these Doritos.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to our friends at Blizzard for that entertaining lead-in. I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Evolution of a Band, 30 Years of Designing Phish, with the one and only Chris Kuroda, and brought to you by Blizzard Lighting, as you just saw. My name is Marion Sandberg, and I'm the Content Director for Live Design and the LDI Show, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, just a few words about this webcast platform, for those of you who've never seen it before. First, you can customize your webcast console, moving windows around, dragging on the title bar, or resize them by clicking on the lower right corner of any window. The toolbar at the bottom of your console will allow you to open and close various widgets on your screen for instant use. And if you experience any technical difficulties with audio or seeing the slides, please just hit F5 to refresh your screen. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. Chris Kuroda has been designing Phish shows for 30 years, bringing a unique and elegant approach to all varieties of projects. His experience ranges from music, theater, and television to architectural site lighting, professional sports, and corporate events. In addition to working with Phish, he's worked with the New York Knicks, New York Rangers, Justin Bieber, Tori Kelly, Ariana Grande, Nicki Minaj, R. Kelly, Aerosmith, the Black Crowes, and many, many more. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's great having you here, and I know there's many, many people who are excited to hear this webcast today, so it's our honor to have you. And maybe we could start talking and give everybody a little bit of a big picture of your background, not just in lighting design, but how you got involved way back in the ancient history of starting working with Phish.
Well, sure. It was the 80s, the late 80s, and I was not a lighting designer, not aspiring to be a lighting designer. I was a computer science major in college in Burlington, Vermont, where Phish is from and where they were at the time a bar band. And I, can honestly say that I was a fan first and would go see them in the bars and thought they were incredibly talented and, like I said, was a big fan, and wound up befriending the guitar player, Trey, and wound up taking guitar lessons from him. And one day he asked me if I knew, at a guitar lesson, if I knew somebody who would help them carry gear to the van after the bar gig, and I volunteered my services and did that for about a week, and then they acquired some little par cans, par 36 par cans, a couple of trees, and it turned out I was the only one available in the two-man crew who had time to use them. So I wound up sitting in front of a little itty-bitty lighting console about the size of my laptop with about 6 faders and had these little par cans and just started lighting the band. And it just kind of went from there. It was never planned to be a career, and I'm in my 30th year now, and it's sort of turned into a life. It went from a temporary thing to a career to a full life. So that's sort of the evolution of it right there. It's been ever since that day was March 30th, 89, and I've been doing it ever since.
So how did that conversation go? Because it's sort of like they look over at the other end of the room and you're the one sitting there and they say, well, you're going to do it if you want to stick around? Because you must have had some technical aptitude at that stage of your life.
Not really. They knew I knew I did, but they knew I knew the music well. There literally was nobody else available at the time. They picked up pretty quickly that I knew the changes of the music. So as long as I could change the color of the par can during the musical change, that was sort of what they wanted. They were always really intent on the lighting being tight with the music, not airy and flowy and kind of random, like try to really be tight with the music. And because I knew the music well enough, they were willing to sit me down in that seat, at least, in a way, for lack of another body able to do it. And I remember having a conversation with Trey and saying, I don't even know how to set these things up. And you want me to sort of, you want me to do this? I don't even know how to set them up. And he just looked at me and he said, tell you what, Chris, we'll figure it out together. And we got to a bar gig and somewhere in Burlington, and he and I set them up together and figured it out. And then once I had a handle on how that worked, it kind of went from there.
So you're an original Phish fan, as well as being the only original member of the crew left.
Correct. I'm an original Phish fan. Bar days, Nectar's. People who know Phish will know that they got their start in a bar called Nectar's. And my first gig with Phish was in a bar where there were 4 people in attendance, and one of them was the bartender. So I've been around from 4 people to 100,000 people, depending, and throughout that entire evolution. So, yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
Amazing. So 30 years later, well, not quite 30 years later, let's talk a little bit about how over the years, how you kind of approach a design with the band, and how you guys, if it's you guys, which I assume it's collaborative, start talking about, what the next design is going to look like and what that discussion looks like.
Certainly. I grew up being a big fan of Candace Brightman, who was the Grateful Dead's lighting designer. Not that I knew I was interested in lighting design at the time, but I went and followed those guys around in my teen years and always liked the lighting. And her big thing were these slow sweeps through the audience and very pretty dark saturated colors. And she was a big fan of matching color in the same palette, in the sense that she wouldn't use blue and red in the same look. It would be red with a magenta or a yellow. Complementary colors were her big thing. And having grown up seeing that, when the time came to start designing lighting rigs for Phish, once we were into the automated fixture world, I sort of took her style as a skeletal base and then built my own style from there. But I knew the types of moves I wanted to do, which were similar to her. I wanted to do big, slow sweeps through the audience on choruses and use complementary colors together on how to build my looks. And the other thing, which she didn't necessarily do, but I was a big fan of, was symmetry. So I would often, for the most part, design all my lighting designs and all my rigs to be very symmetrical, with fixtures all symmetrical to each other. I would build all my looks and scenes symmetrically, color, position, everything. It was all very, very symmetrical, and that's something I still gravitate to today. Try to mix it up by making some asymmetrical looks, but most of the architecture that I designed for Phish is still very, very much symmetrical. The other thing is that everybody, including myself and in the Phish world, is a big fan of things being organic. So they never wanted, they're very purist, and I believe in that philosophy. So for many years, Phish shows were just Phish, audio, and lighting. They didn't want lasers. They didn't want video panels, at least back then, back in those days. They just wanted pure lighting, good sound, and the band playing on stage. They don't run around, they don't move, they stay in their positions on stage and they just play. They're true musicians in the sense that they don't showboat. So, you know, we wanted to be able to accent that purity by keeping the visual aspect of their show pure with just lighting. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know we're going to get into some of your looks of some of your designs that you've done over the last, particularly the last few years, since 2010. And when we see some of those latter designs, we can talk a little bit about how we, you know, there is a little bit of video element in there, but where that came from. But why don't we progress a little bit to the last decade at least, so we can start really talking about how the show's evolved. And I know you're, especially the band's fans, know what the shows look like and attend so many shows. Let's go back to the shot that's showing now from 2010, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that particular design, and then we'll progress from there.
Yes, absolutely. We refer to that, our vocabulary in Phish lighting world is we refer to that as the 3-circle lighting rig. And in years before that, I was experimenting with shapes as sort of the back truss lighting area. You know, I did diamonds at one point, I did triangles at one point. I just, you know, thought shapes were cool, and I sort of, it's kind of silly, but always sort of tried to make the lighting rig, just the architecture itself almost looked like a spaceship, and I found that shapes worked really well for that. And, you know, through experimentation and also watching some of my other heroes light their bands, like Mark Brickman and Pink Floyd, and again, Candace with the Grateful Dead, there was a lot of circle truss elements in their designs. So I learned very quickly that when you have a circle truss and symmetrically place your fixtures around the circle, you can get a very organic movement. You know, if you point them all in and then pan them all around, it gives you, it's very pinwheel. There's just a lot of really organic things that you can accomplish with a circle that you cannot accomplish with any other shape. So we settled into this 3-circle design that you're seeing the image of right now. And basically what we wound up doing was we wound up tying 72% blow-through black scrim inside of each circle. And with that being there as an element, then we could take those fixtures that were around the circle and paint little pictures, sort of organic forms, and it made another layer. Like you can see in this particular photo, you see the pink and the green's just inside the pink, so that particular shape is half the fixtures are in pink, completing a circle around the edge, and then just inside of that you have the green, and we were able to just sort of create image, but it's not projection, it's not video, it's still just light, and it's still pure. If I bump to this next slide, it's just another example of how we were able to accomplish many different looks with that type of configuration, with the fixtures around the truss pointing at the scrim and painting pictures and creating different pan and tilts to have different shapes up there. If I move to the next one, there's another example of just trying to be clever and creating another shape. The cool thing about this one is that, you know, I would be experimenting, and there's a lot of different shapes you can make, so I would make a lot of images like this, and our very clever audience would look at these particular kind of shapes, and there were a few of them, more than this, and they would actually, they thought it was some kind of like new alien language, which sort of, you know, like characters of a new alien language, which sort of pushed me a little further to go down that road of trying to create better and more alien language type of shapes like this one that I just popped to from 2012. You know, it was just a really cool way to create a layer beyond just light on the band or light in the air to give another organic visual.
And this is 2 years later now. So we just went from 2010 to 2012, right? And interestingly, at this time, certainly, audiences were very used to seeing, or had already become very used to seeing, high levels of video, of course, in concert tours, really pummeled by IMAG, and maybe one might say stages overpowered by IMAG and video.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is something Phish was blatantly against. Even to this day, they're not fans of IMAG. They're not fans of anything finite. So, for example, musically, if they're playing a song, lyrics, whatever they may be, they believe it's up to the audience member to translate what the meaning of that song is to themselves. They hear a song and they decide what it means to them, what the song is about, and it's a very individualized hope that each person has a different attachment to that song. So the Phish philosophy is, if you have video, for example, if you have IMAG or just content, and they're playing a song, and I'm just going to make this up, and you put up an image of a tree, let's say, people are going to associate that image of a tree with the song that's being played, and you're sort of forcing a perspective onto the audience member of what the meaning of the music is. And they, and myself as well, all agree, we're all very firmly against forcing perspective in that way. So with that philosophy, that's a major reason why they were not fans of content or IMAG or anything like that. Again, following the purist philosophy. Yeah.
Just to jump in, I'm just kind of monitoring a Q&A, and I know we usually leave that to the end, but I've noticed a couple of people asking, are you spelling things out with your rig or with the lighting or the rig? Because you mentioned the sort of alien, it looks a little bit like alien text, or even in the negative space. Are we seeing that in anything that we might not be
not intentionally. Like, I don't associate what would look like an alien language character back in those days with a real alphabet. Again, that's up to the creative mind of the audience member to look at that and say, either A, wow, that looks cool, what a cool shape, and how pretty is that, or B, maybe that has some deeper meaning. I need to process this. And we just sort of leave that door open and let each person decide for themselves what it means or doesn't mean, or if it's just pretty. So, again, that's sort of the purist philosophy that Phish sort of bases their entire, for lack of a better word, existence around. So.
Sure. Sometimes just pretty is okay too.
It's all meant to be pretty in the first place.
And it is. And it is.
That's another thing about Phish. We don't, and I'm sure people do this, we don't intentionally try to make ugly. Some people intentionally try to make ugly and think that looks really cool, and it does if it's done well. We try to intentionally make pretty about 99.9% of the time. So.
Well, I think most people would agree on that.
Excuse me?
I said I think most people would agree that you've done that. So.
Okay, cool. Well, then, mission accomplished. We try our hardest, you know, and we also listen to our fan base a lot and try to respect their opinions. I don't want to get too into this, but diehard Phish fans will know what the ovals are, and the ovals were an experiment in lighting. They're these big giant ovals that hung behind the band with a bunch of auras built into them and some LED tape and all these things that we thought would be super cool, and it turned out to be pretty ugly and pretty much a disaster. And the fan base complained about them and said, I hate them. We don't like them. They're, you know, usually you don't really listen to the fan base and go, well, whatever, this is the lighting design. But we sort of took it to heart and went, you know, these are not going over well with the fan base, so we got rid of them quick and moved on to a new idea. We listen to our fans as much as we can. We hope they like everything we do, but if they don't, we make decisions as to whether we agree with them or disagree with them and approach it like that.
So while we're on that topic, Chris, talk about that a little more. and I know we want to definitely touch on the rest of these designs over the last few tours, but you and I have talked about how, and it's certainly no secret for a lot of those listening and anyone who knows your work and the band's work, that the Phish fandom is not just your regular fan base, right? You and I have talked about how it's such a sense of community.
Yeah,
and how that really does influence your work. It influences your work and the band's work.
Absolutely, 100%. It's incredibly unique in the sense that, I relate it to professional sports guys getting interviewed after the game, or bands, or any entity that has a fan base. The most common thing to say is, "Oh, we have the best fans, and our fans are the greatest." And I believe that about our fans too, but it's different with the Phish in the sense that Phish and their fans and the band and everyone associated with it, it's definitely more of a community. It's almost like a giant extended family. A lot of our fans have been coming for a long time. We all know each other by name. We all know each other by face. There are more forums where the fans talk about every aspect of Phish, from the music to the lighting to the audio to whatever else is going on. Discussions constantly. They all like to communicate with each other. They all like to befriend each other. They all come to see each other as well as the band. They make plans. A lot of these folks only know each other from the Phish experience. However, they become bonded by that and communicate just from being in the same concerts together. And they, in a way, become family of their own. So we do have the greatest fans, but it's definitely more like a community and a family than just a fan base. I believe that exists. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say also so many Phish fans go to multiple shows on any given tour. And of course, the set list is completely bonkers. So talk about that. We're going to go through all these designs, of course, but that really applies to all of your work on all of these designs, the massive set list, and how you have to program and that. So I think that's touching on as well.
Absolutely. There's a master list with every possible song that they could play that exists. However, Phish does not have a set list. They do not go on stage writing a set list. They just go on stage and play, period. So there is no predetermined information to decide what's coming or what's going to be next. Because in the jam band format, they'll walk on stage, play a song, wind up jamming, and you never know what song they're going to wind up next. Because that's the way Phish was in that unique format. The console is programmed in a very unique way. Songs, for the most part, are not written. I refer to it as the world's biggest content. So in front of me are hundreds of options and looks based on where they go next, left turn, right turn, beat, jam, happy song, and just hundreds of effects at my fingertips to quote plus or contour, whatever word you choose to use. It's all based. It's all look based. So as I stack up the list, hundreds of lists that I go from look, and then no matter what look I'm in, I manipulate that look. Whether it's a color effect, a move, a sweep, go to another look, a dimmer effect. There's hundreds of effects that play on top of the layer over the base look. And that's a philosophy for 99% of way Phish. The base look, and then manipulate that look. As I see it, as how the music flow, whatever I feel is the right thing to do based on that particular musical moment. Now, having said that, there are songs that are not quote-unquote uncomfortable. They're just so complicated and complex that punting them over the years, I've learned that punting them is you're just making a mess. I wind up just making a mess of lighting, trying to keep up with a very complicated song, and we're not fans of making a mess. So, for years, I didn't really know how to get around that. And then I learned how to cue back a song properly for the first time in 2007 when I was on song R. Kelly. I was taught how to back a complicated song by my friend Patrick Pearson. And he and I were together on the R. Kelly tour. He taught me a lot about cue stacking. So then I took the knowledge that I learned from him back to Phish and went, okay, these 16 complicated songs need to be stacked. So we just literally created a live the really big whatever, and write these cue songs that are just complicated content. And then there they are, I have them on macros in front of me. So if a band winds up dropping in one of these songs, oh, it's this song. I trigger the macro. My base look stack goes away, as I was talking about earlier, and gets replaced in the console with the cue stack for that song. And I'm ready to now do a go button, go for that song, for that cue stack.
Amazing.
The cool thing is it's not as simple as just going this, go out of that. So thanks to the brilliance of my associate designer programming in Git, he has figured out really elegant ways within the console, within the programming, to elegantly get in and out of these stacks and back and forth without the light switching or blacking out or doing things that you don't want to do, because it's not a cue thing, so you never know when you're going to need to do that. So globally within the console, you need to be able to do it at any time, and that was sort of the magic that he brings to the show, is being able to understand how Phish is all over the map and programming the show in a way that no matter what I do, it's elegant and clean. That makes sense?
Absolutely, and shout out to Andrew Gifton down there. Let's keep going through so we can talk a little bit about how we go from this and some of the looks that have come out of this and into the present day.
Sure. Well, like I was saying, we did this. We wound up, designing all this stuff throughout the 90s and wound up this circle rig. And we had it for, I think we had it for 4 or 5 years. I mean, it was so great. I just loved it. I never wanted to change it. And then one year, I believe it was 2013. Hang on, I just want to push to this next. That's more of that. Stand by. There we go. So that's 2013. That's an image of the new lighting rig. So that came to be basically a directive from the band, who came to me and said, look, we've been doing this circle thing forever. It's common. Other people are sort of copying us. And we want to start going down directions with the production that we haven't approached before. And they gave me a long sort of, speech, for lack of a better word, about how they, as musicians, have become better musicians through collaboration with other musicians. And they seriously and very honestly requested that I collaborate with other folks because 2 heads are better than 1. So this next design, in order to break away from the circle look and the scrim look, painting on the scrim with the lighting and all that, I wound up collaborating with a lighting designer named Suzanne Sasek. And Suzanne and I wound up together coming up with this current design that you're seeing now in the 2013 slide. And it's a lot more basic. It's a lot of straight trusses, and then up top you can see there's 4 what we refer to as the claws, and they're packed with, at one point it was 101s, and then it sort of morphed over the next year to X4Ss because they were a little more forgiving with the color and a little brighter and a little just a nicer light than the 101 was back then. And so we got away from the circle trusses. It's still purist lighting, but it was a sort of a whole new look for Phish in a different way. The other thing about the Suzanne look, and again, I'm just looking through the slides here, is she brought to the table it was just a scrim behind the band that we lit with color blazes, and it was a three-level, well, so the scrim was like 40, 50 feet tall, but we would have truss levels of color blazes so we could light the scrim in thirds. So you'd light the top third, or the middle third, or the bottom third, or the whole thing, or three different colors. We wanted to sort of have that flexibility to be able to light it in different ways. I'm going to push to this photo, and you can see the scrim behind the band, and at the top it's green. At the bottom it's Congo. There's a color in the middle, and it created a really nice sort of background base for it. And sort of the band, as you see in this photo, they're sort of in a yellow amber, but thanks to the scrim being a Congo behind them, they sort of pop out a little more, which again, this was a whole new look for Phish. You know, it was a white scrim, and the white scrim behind the band is not a new trick. It's very old and theatrical, and people have been doing it for years, but we felt like it was the perfect way to move away from the look we already had and try something new. And it worked out great. We were all very happy with it. And thanks to Suzanne Sasek, and you know, she brought that idea to the table, and we all gravitated around it and went, yes, that's a great idea, let's do that. And that's sort of how we wound up here in 2013. Again, still able to do the signature Phish stuff, the aerial graphics, as you can see, and all that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Again, same lighting rig, different look. You know, and we were able to sort of, this is a non-scrimmed look, so to speak. Again, different look, and you know, we were able to sort of make it look like Phish, but in a completely different way. The thing about
you still have
this,
that symmetry that's very signature to you, Chris, right? That symmetry is still there. Some of those really fundamentals are there for the looks you like to create.
Yes, absolutely. And the other cool thing about this lighting rig is there were lots and lots and lots of X4s, X4Ss, as you can see. There's like 80 or 90 or 100, I forget. And having that many fixtures opened the door for lots of different crosses or fan outs, or, you know, take 4 and do an ACL fan out here, and take 8 and have them cross down here. And there was a lot of flexibility on how to build the pan and tilts for these looks with so many fixtures sort of at your disposal. And it was very full and very thick, which we also liked. And also still a little bit airy, which again, we also liked.
So speaking of collaboration, I know you want to show a few more shots, and maybe we can scroll through the rest of the 2014 shots. But on the next design, you also collaborated, and you, for the first time, introduced some screens, really.
Yes, absolutely. Once we broke away from the circles and started doing this design that is still on the screen, everybody started embracing the vibe of evolution. So like I said, we had sat in that circle truss design for years and years. Then we moved on to this, and everyone started wanting, myself included, band management, wanted evolution to happen more. So we didn't really sit in any one design too long before we were on to the next design. They also wanted to experiment with some new, you know, technology, being video, just to give it a shot and see what we could accomplish with it. But the mantra for the video was to try to make, because of what I spoke about earlier, to try to make video not look like video, to try to make it look organic, content that doesn't look like anything. It's just sort of organic and flowing and moving. And then on the other end was the idea of evolution within the show, because Phish is a long show. It's 2 sets with an intermission, and we wanted to find a way to make the 2 sets look different so that there was this feeling of evolution. What I wound up doing was sort of interviewed a few people to collaborate with who were very well known for video, but being very artistic with it and being very clever and being very organic. That's a sort of a theme word in our world. And spoke with a bunch of lighting designers and wound up having a conversation with Abigail Holmes, who's done some Roger Waters and some Talking Heads and really sort of artsy, creative stuff. And got on the phone with her, and we spoke for about 2 hours, and we clicked. She was just, you know, when you talk to somebody and you're just, this is the right person. She totally embraced what we were trying to do, where we wanted to go, that we wanted to do something different, that we wanted some evolution, and that we wanted to try to make it look organic and make content not look like content so much, more like a background layer. So, in collaborating with her, we came up with this design, and basically what that is it's a semicircle or a half moon around the band on the deck, as you can see. And then the video wall up there, you're seeing a photo of it separated currently, but that actually folds in on itself to make a perfect rectangle. And what we did was we would perform our first set with the video wall closed, and it was like a small little rectangle, and we'd pump our content through it and what have you. And then for the second set, to show evolution, we called it the exploding video wall. So we would open it up and have it explode open during whatever the first song of the second half was, and show our evolution that way. In this photo, you can see it closed. So you can see that it's just a small little rectangle, and there's some cool little organic content. All the content had motion. It all moved around, and that was our quote-unquote first set look. And what we also did is we hid trusses behind this configuration so that when it exploded open, at the same time we would introduce a little automation and reveal trusses that weren't in view for the first set to make the second set look bigger with more fixtures and more trusses, so that the second half sort of had a different vibe. So the video wall would explode open, some more trusses would reveal themselves, and then we would be moving on to these kind of looks here. This is a second set look with the more fixtures and more trusses. Same with, this is a first set look. You can see if you look closely, the video wall's collapsed there. Again, a first set look. And the content is just very simple, very organic, no finite images. Again, first set, first set. You know, we try to keep it pretty, like we said. This is a second set image, so you can see the video wall is now exploded open, content still playing, but a very different look. It would take about 30 seconds for the thing to open, and it opened about 25 feet, something like that, 18 feet, I forget exactly, but it opened a lot, which gave us a lot of room to move the hidden trusses from the first set down or up, however we wanted to reveal them to create a different look. The cool thing and the hard thing about this particular video wall, I mean, it was a gigantic, crazy mechanism. We called it the machine that would allow it to explode open like that. I think it weighed like 18,000 pounds, something crazy like that. So we went to Tate and said, this is what we want to do. We want it to close, then we want it to open. And when it opens, we want a lot of negative space in between the panels, just like you can see in this photo, that there's negative space in between the panels. We want it to look sort of airy, like it does. I'm trying to find a better image. Here we go. Let me push to this image real quick. So you can see there's a lot of negative space with it opening. There's just single panels. That was intentional by design, because we didn't want it to just look like a big rectangle. We wanted it to be sort of organic looking. So, like I said, we went to Tate and said, this is what we want to do, and they went, no problem, we can do that easy. And we went, oh, here's the other thing. We want to rake it down towards the band 25 degrees in its closed and in its open. So when it opens, it needs to open raked 25 degrees already. And because it weighs so much, they went, oh, whoa, wait a minute. And it took them about, I'm going to say 4 months and about 10 different ideas before they figured out, with the physics of it, how to make it open and close at a 25-degree angled rake.
Nice.
So that was it's crazy.
Well, Tate are your folks for getting a challenging set design built, right?
Oh, yeah. Everyone there is an MIT or a Harvard graduate. Literally everyone in that building is a genius. So our guy was Matthew Hales, and he worked with us and was supportive and just kept the project going and kept trying different ideas until he was able to make it happen. And, you know, without him and his passion to make our idea a reality, it probably wouldn't have happened. So I got to give him credit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're very proud of it. I mean, it only lasted a year, this design, but it was something very different. We had never introduced video to our show before. Thanks to the genius of Abigail Holmes, she was able to create content that was organic and not very finite in any way, shape, or form, and the video just became kind of a background layer. The other interesting thing about the video is, again, I had to punt the video because I never knew what the next image should be based on what the next song should be. And Andrew Giffen had to passionately and meticulously find a way to make the video transition from one piece of content to the next piece of content in no particular order. If you have it in order, you can just program smooth crossfades or wipes or what have you. But if I wanted to go from piece of content 1 to piece of content 73, I needed it to transition smoothly, and that was a challenge for the team and himself to figure out how to make that happen. So what wound up happening is, in the MA2, I had a page, a screen, of thumbnails of each piece of content, pages and pages of thumbnails. And I could scroll between the thumbnails till I found the one I wanted, tap it like it was a tile on the MA, it was a tile on the MA, and I would get my transition. And then he also created some speed tiles for me. Do you want this to transition in 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds? Do you want it to crossfade? Do you want it to wipe the old one out while it's wiping the new one in? Do you want it to wipe up, wipe down? And he went through all that logic to give me all those options at my fingertips. And that's, you know, he had to do that because that's how Phish works. There really was no other option.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So we definitely want to spend some time, of course, on the latest design because it is probably the most, at least technically complex. We already have a couple dozen questions about it, but I'll let you kind of go through it before we start taking questions toward the end. And it looks beautiful, and it is so complex, and you have Trust doing crazy things. So why don't we move on to the current design?
Absolutely. Let me find a tile. Here we go. Okay. This is an image from the current design. And that came to be...
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Thank you.
I mean,
we're very
really
proud of it.
Shot.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that. We are very proud of this design. And this all came to be simply, the band came to me early last year. You're looking at a shot from this year, but the band came to me early last year. And basically said, in the simplest form, we feel like we don't want to tell you what we want this year, because they drove the desire for video, they drove the desire to get away from the circle trusses, and they came to me and said, we don't want to tell you what we want you to tell us what you want to do. And I quite simply said, I already know exactly what I want to do. I want to take a bunch of sticks of truss and throw them up there and move them around and create different shapes throughout the night and have it, you know, evolve as the night goes on. And, you know, that was basically the simple concept, just 30 sticks of truss with the ability to move and create shapes like this shape you're seeing we call the slant, for example. And this basic concept took, you know, without realizing what it entailed to make it a reality, we just dove into it and started. Abigail Holmes, again, sort of helped us with a little truss configuration design, and we sort of went from there. So what it is it appears to be 5 simple sticks of truss, but really they're broken up, and they're 5-foot sections, 8-foot sections, and 10-foot sections. And they're so close to each other that they just look like 5 sticks. So what we do is we grid them up in the mother grid for the start of the show, and the audience walks in and looks at the lighting rig and goes, man, that looks really simple. It's just 5 sticks of truss. And then once the show starts, then we start moving them and creating our shapes. We go into this slant shape. That's what we call, it looks like 5 sticks staggered. You know, we have X's, we have slant the other way, we have low frowns. This is a shape it's hard for me to see, but it's yet another shape. Again, yet another shape. And we're here, we call this one frown low, because it's sort of frowning, but it's real, comes way down, like just barely over the heads of the band, of the performers. And you know, that was sort of what we wanted to do. We wanted to have something that you walked in and saw was simple, and have sort of all the freedom to automate it however we saw fit. We ran into a lot of sort of roadblocks that we didn't expect, but thanks to the geniuses that I work with, slowly one by one, they got checked off the list. The first one was we are implementing XYZ tracking from the MA console onto the band members. And what that means is, in simplest terms, if you take a stick of truss with a light on it and point it at a band member and it's horizontal, and then you take that stick of truss and make it vertical, that fixture is going to be pointing at the sidewall. It's not going to be pointing at the band member anymore because you've moved the truss. So through the technology in the MA of the XYZ tracking, we were able to have the light in the I'm not going to be very good at explaining this, but in the simplest way, stay on the band member, tracking with the band member as the truss moved through 3-dimensional space. So no matter what configuration the trusses are in, whether they're angled, vertical, horizontal, whether they're 50 feet in the air or 5 feet in the air, that light is going to remain pointed on its target, or what it's...
And if the target is moving as well, if the target's moving.
Well, that's no, not necessarily. See, we're doing it in reverse. Other people use XYZ tracking to follow a moving target. We use XYZ tracking to stay on the stationary target, but the source is moving, the truss itself.
Got it.
So we're almost doing it in reverse compared to the way many other people do it. That technology is not perfect. We ran into a lot of roadblocks with it not tracking properly, or lights jumping around and moving around, and you know, if you go from look A to look B or position A to position B, you know, the lights would jump and spin around, and we had all kinds of problems like that. But thanks to the passion of the people that I work with, Andrew Giffen, Abigail Holmes, etc., they meticulously, one by one, attacked each little problem and found little back doors and back ways to sort of fool the console into thinking different things, and were eventually able to make it almost perfect. So we're rolling with this almost perfect. It's certainly not perfect. The biggest challenge that we had is with Phish. You often see what we call the graphic positions, or the symmetrical in the air pan and tilts. Those are pan and tilt values. While tracking the band members, they're XYZ coordinate values. So the console really didn't like, or wasn't able to do smoothly, transitioning from XYZ to pan and tilt without crazy things happening, whether the heads would flip or the lights would jump 10 feet in the air, or all kinds of things like that that weren't smooth and elegant, which is Phish's sort of MO. So, you know, the people that I work with worked and worked and worked passionately and tried different idea after different idea after different idea, and wrote crazy, long, elaborate macros that are always playing in the background, and figured out how to make it as good as it is, which is it's an accomplishment all in itself. So.
And Chris, I understand that of course, with Phish, the fan reaction is a big deal, and we've discussed that obviously through looking at previous tours and the history of Phish. And seems like the verdict is in that fans really like this present design.
It's the most.
I find it exciting, and it's so complex technically that I'm sure a lot of them realize that, but also appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the most widely accepted design by the fan base that I can remember. I haven't heard a negative thing about it. And through the evolution of it, because we like it so much and because they like it so much, we've put twice the amount of effort into making it better. Last year when we did this, we drove all the truss moves from the tape navigator and from the tape navigator system, the motion system. And that meant get on a headset, call the cue to the tape guy backstage, wait while he loads it, and get your truss move eventually. We built all the shapes in the 3D visualizer of the lighting console, and then had to give the navigator programmer literally a spreadsheet of values, lots and lots and lots of values for each truss that they would meticulously have to type into the navigator system to create the shape that we wanted, that we created in the 3D visualizer on the MA in like 10 seconds. Oh, take this truss, angle it this way, lower it that. Oh, let's make a smile with them all, or a frown. And very easy in the console, very difficult in the navigator system. So last year we meticulously had them build the 10 shapes that there was time to build, because it was a very meticulous process, and rolled with it last year, and it was a big success, but we didn't have enough control to time these moves out with the music the way we wanted to. So between last year and this year, Andrew Giffen decided that we were going to drive the truss moves from the MA2, that we could control the speed ourselves, we could control what shape we wanted to ourselves. When it was time to go to the next shape, hit the go button and it goes. You don't have to wait while you call it backstage and wait for them to get ready to move it. And it's been a game changer. We've actually programmed truss moves into song cue stacks as lighting cues. So when this portion of the song happens, the trusses automatically move to whatever we've requested them to do. And as far as timing the moves out with the music, it's literally been a game changer this year compared to last year.
Amazing.
So now we're driving all this stuff. Excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead. Please,
I was just saying we're driving it all. We're driving it all from the console now. You know,
amazing.
It still runs off the navigator. All the console does is request that the navigator allow the console to make the truss move, and Usually the navigators, it's okay, it's safe. And we, like I said, we control the speed, we control the angle, we control it all as if it were a moving light, even though it's a moving truss. So it's been fantastic.
So for all the lighting geeks out there, and including me, can you take us through a little bit of the current rig and what you have up there and what's making all this beamy goodness?
Sure. Currently, there are 60 Roby Spiders, which I love. Like, they're fantastic. It's an LED pixel light. We had Claypaky BIs for a long time, and we knew we wanted to get away from them. They have the kaleidoscope, and we felt like we just used that trick up. But we still liked the LED pixel wash light idea as our wash light. So we found the Roby Spider. There's 60 of them. They're bright as can be. They don't have a kaleidoscope, which I actually think is a good thing. They have a good zoom range. They can be a wash light. They can get pretty narrow. They can do pixel tricks, as we like to call them. We write all our own pixel tricks. We don't use the built-in pixel tricks that these pixel lights have. We always write our own, so we patch and run these lights in that each pixel is a light, so you need a million universes to do it, but we do it, and we program them, program all our own tricks, and try to stay away from the built-in stuff because we feel that it's too basic and too played, and you're going to see all that built-in stuff in any other show because we feel that we're probably one of the few acts that take the time to actually do that because it takes a lot of time to build these pixel effects. So that's the wash light. What I refer to as the gobo light, or what you would call the spot, is we have, I think there's 52 Best Boys, PRG Best Boys. And they're bright, and we love them, and they're just like any other spot these days. They're all good for the most part. But the nice thing about the PRG light is you can talk to the gobo wheel with console timing and tell it to move from gobo to gobo in the amount of time that you have specified to get from gobo 1 to gobo 6. From the console, a lot of these moving fixtures, a lot of these today's spot fixtures have like a speed channel, and it'll determine the speed that the wheel moves, but you can't dictate from the console the timing of it. It's either going to move from gobo 1 to gobo 2 in 0 time or in 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but you can't, if you say go from 1 to 5 and you have the speed channel set at 5 seconds, it's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds to get there. And they do this because they're afraid you as the designer or the operator or the programmer are going to leave the gobo wheel in between two holes and fry the bearings, and it's all a heat management sort of fear. So PRG has done a wonderful job with this light with the heat management and have allowed us to talk to the gobo wheel with console timing. And that means a lot to us just to keep everything smooth. So when I'm going from look 1 to look 80, and it's going from gobo 1 to gobo 5 and color red to color blue and beam size this to beam size that and iris size this to iris size that, all those attributes happen within the timing and all land perfectly together at the end of the cue. That's why we use that fixture, simply because of that trick. It's literally a game breaker, so we're big fans of that. And then I'm using the GLP-1, is that what it is? JDC-1, excuse me.
The strobe.
JDC-1, the strobe, because it tilts and it's cool. And we do a lot of cool tricks with that. And our hybrid light is the Icon Edge, another PRG product, which we just think it's probably the best hybrid out there, simply because in spot mode, we call beam mode spot mode, beam mode being make it look like a Sharpie, spot mode being make it look like a spot fixture. It's bright in spot mode, and quite simply, that's why we like it, because it's bright in spot mode. And I think that's basically it. It's only
So
5
if
fixture
you don't mind,
types in the whole rig.
show us the next few views. We have a couple more shots of this current tour, which are beautiful. And then we have so many questions, and we're kind of out of time, but I do want to take a couple questions. So we're going to run over. So we welcome everyone to stay. We're not going to hang up on you yet. If you feel like hanging around for a few minutes for some questions, we'll take a few questions now. We'll just take a look at some of these rest of the pictures from the current tour, which are just beautiful. You still have your iconic symmetric thing going on, which is really beautiful. Maintaining that sort of originality and feel.
Even in weird, wonky truss shapes, we found ways to keep the symmetry just the way we wanted. This next one I'm going to show you is really cool because it's trusses vertical, which we believe no one has ever done before. We had to have Tate manufacture special hardware for us so that the weight distribution made sense to go completely vertical with the trusses, which you're seeing here in this shot.
That's a beautiful shot. Thank
you.
And what are the fixtures that are twinkling in the background there then? Are those...
Okay, they are GLP atoms, and there's a story behind those too, and I'll keep it brief. We wanted to show the trusses moving so you could see them in the dark environment of a concert, but we didn't want to do truss toners because it's a 50-year-old trick and everyone does truss toners. So we wanted to figure out a way to show the trusses moving without toning them, quote unquote. And Abigail Holmes came up with the brilliant idea of putting they're like little LED park cans, they're small, one little LED park can on either end of either stick of truss, like they're little eyes almost. Each truss has its own little eyes. And then when I bring those up and turn them on and move the trusses, you can see the trusses moving because you see the little LED park cans moving. And that was what we thought, clever, elegant solution of showing the trusses moving, but not doing truss toners like everybody else does. So that's great. That's the concept there. Let me see if I can find a good photo of that. I apologize while I scroll, but I think you can see they're purple in that one. Congo. Oh, they're not on there. Not on there. Not on there. They're red there. This is actually a really good representation of the atoms in full force. So even though those trusses are straight and horizontal, the atoms make a really nice background layer to the look, regardless of whether they're showing the trusses moving or not. And this was kind of a surprise to us. When we finally started using them, we realized that, we put them in here to show the trusses moving, but actually, as a bonus, they create a beautiful background layer to the entire show. So we were pleased in both respects.
Well, I think since we're over our allotted time, I'm going to just jump right into some questions, if you don't mind, Chris. I know that you're done with your main part, so there's just some interesting questions, and I think it's I'm going to lump some of them together because we have some things that are within the same topic. One of which, which I think was inevitable, and a question that I had also was going to be about some of the one-off gags, especially of course New Year's Eve, and talking about how you deal with them, how you design or program them, and of course, someone asked if you can reveal what's going to happen this year, which I'm going to guess is we're not going to talk about. But maybe you can just talk about those as
cannot negative. Do that.
Yeah.
When it comes to those New Year's gags, when it comes to those New Year's gags or Halloween gags or any gags of any nature, big festival gags that we do when we do our own festivals, the team gets much bigger. We usually hire out somebody like Moment Factory or David Gallo, or there's a really brilliant sort of genius design idea guy named Chris McGregor out in California, in San Francisco, and we usually talk to these people, get their ideas, have them pitch their ideas. When we settle on the one that we like, we sort of let them drive how it's going to go down, and then we support them with the lighting and the lighting programming and whatever they need to make their vision of the gag a reality. So we participate in collaboration with these folks, but it's a big team effort, and everyone sort of just tries to have everybody's back in the spirit of the gag globally being a big success.
So another question here, I've had a couple questions about the sort of size of the design and how flexible it is in terms of going from different size venues, so adapting to like a festival from an arena to stadium, or what's usually the wheelhouse of the size of venue that you design for, and then how flexible it becomes after that?
That's a great question. You know, the rig is the rig. You know, we design it for arenas or small stadiums or, you know, big sheds. The problem we run into is trim heights. Trim heights are always different, room to room to room. So with these moving trusses, for example, if you're at a really low trim height, you're not going to be able to move them quite as far as you'd like to. So we set limits we set a lower limit and an upper limit, and then the trigonometry, the math is done. People would assume it's from the deck up, so, you know, don't go lower than 5 feet off the deck, don't go higher than whatever. But what we decided to do was make the math from the mother grid down, and that made it a lot easier to determine what the limit should be on a given day safely by doing the math from the mother grid down instead of the stage up, because the stage up you might not be able to go as high as you would want to, or the system could maybe even crash into the mother grid a little bit. I don't know if that could really happen, but, you know, determining it from up to down made a lot more sense. And then, you know, we update our shapes every day. So once those limits are in place, it's real easy for GIF to bring up the shape in the visualizer, pick the height just by spinning encoders based on the trim of the day, and go, well, this should be a little higher, this should be a little lower, even things out by spinning encoders, store, like you're storing a lighting look, move on to the next shape, clean it up, store, move on to the next shape, all in the visualizer. Even though it's in the visualizer, it's actually cleaning up live with the real trusses.
So, Chris, we also have a few questions about, of course, the major disappointment of the Curveball Festival being canceled due to, of course, weather and safety, and we all understand that entirely. And you and your team did a ton of work on that show, and fans were really anticipating seeing you guys. And so there's kind of questions coming out of, you know, are we going to see looks from that, what you had done? Is it kind of like just go out the window? I'm sure you have inspiration that you used for that show that you want to repurpose, and it was a real disappointment. And I know for you personally, it was a lot of work that was a disappointment.
Absolutely, and it's exactly that. I mean, there were some special and unique ideas that we had saved for that festival that we obviously did not get to display to our awesome fan base. So we keep those in our back pocket, and we'll find the right place to use those. Let me just say, you know, it was, you know, it's another Phish show. It wasn't, we weren't in lighting, we weren't treating it like it was, you know, something that it wasn't. You know, in the end, it's a Phish performance, and we were ready for that. Like I said, we had some back pocket cool tricks, but I just want to say that we were just as disappointed as the fan base. Like, everyone was crushed. There were tears backstage, band members, management, just everyone involved. It was very, very sad for all of us. We literally couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It was
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature. But I know that, you know, make it up to them might not be the right phrase, but I know that they're going to do the best they can to make it up to them in some way, shape, or form in the future. The band members, more than anybody else, were the most disappointed. They were just crushed. So, yeah, it was
So
sad.
I'm going to just take a couple more questions, and I'm sorry there are so many great questions, but we're obviously not going to get to all of them. But we have a couple questions just about unique challenges, and I think especially with the fact that you run the show, most of the show live. So people have questions about, if there are challenges that go into that, or have ever been some kind of surprises or changes in the design that became a mixed blessing, or just, what have been like kind of your biggest challenges in a show yet?
I mean, my biggest challenge is, like it always has been, is since it's a gigantic punt, is choosing the right thing for the right moment, or anticipating where the music's going to go next and being prepared for it. And I'm a pretty good guesser when it comes to that sort of stuff. So it's always a challenge punting Phish, because you never know where it's going to go, or what direction, and what if it's going to take a left turn, or who knows what. So it's a big guessing game, which I've become pretty good at. The other thing is they have this thing, it's almost like a tension and release, almost like EDM, where they'll build up musically, and I have to anticipate if they're going to release on one now, or if they're going to take it around 4 more measures, or that kind of thing. So the interesting thing is, even today, you have to, quote unquote, push the button on the console before the musical moment happens if you want it to happen together. So if I guess wrong, the lights are going to pop to white and sweep all over the audience and be this gigantic moment, and the band will still be in a little moment. So if I guess right, it's a magical moment. If I guess wrong, it's a mistake. That is probably the biggest challenge, is punting Phish globally as a whole, the whole concept of doing it and doing it well. That's what I would say.
Well, I would say I think we can probably all agree that you do it, and you do it well, Chris. And we're going to close out now, and we thank you so, so much for all this fantastic information. I thank everyone for calling in. If you enjoyed this presentation, you're going to be able to check out more at livedesign.com/webcast, where you can see all of our webcasts. And I'd like to, of course, thank Chris Kuroda, our sponsor, Blizzard Lighting, which you can visit at blizzardpro.com. And you can see them at live, in fact, at LVI in Las Vegas. If you're coming to the show next week, they will be at booth 1927. So check them out, because they always have something fantastic and unique, and their booth design is always fabulous. And for those of you who have registered, obviously, if you're on the call, the on-demand version of this webcast will be available on the Live Design website within the next 24 hours. And thank you so much to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And I also want to say thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. It was just an honor and a pleasure to be able to talk about this to my friends, my peers, Phish's fans, everybody. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Pleasure's ours, Chris. Thank you so much.
Okay.